here. All right, I'm going to post the notes in the chat, and folks can see if you're able to access that. Should be. And then if you add your name on there, then we'll know that you joined. Okay, Misty's here. Maybe you were here all along and I just didn't realize. Misty, were you talking at all? If you weren't, that's okay, but you're muted. Oh, you're having trouble with your audio. My bad. I can't hear you, but you looked like you unmuted. Will it let you? Oh, there you are.
Oh, good. Yay.
Yay.
It did this for my meeting this morning too.
Success.
I'm sorry. Thank you for posting the document, Anne.
Yeah, for sure. I think Jill said she could take, or you said you could take notes. And yeah, you want to kick us off?
Did you welcome everybody already?
I did not. Well, halfway.
So thank you, everybody, for coming to the meeting. This is the EMCO-WorldCat Entities Community of Practice meeting. It's nice to see everybody here. We have a nice turnout today, so thank you so much. Jeff, I see you're on the call too. We were going to have a nice demonstration from you, which I'm excited to see. You were going to show us the Meridian demo, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see that. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course, my pleasure.
I don't know if you were, ready to jump into that, or if we had things that we wanted to discuss
Sorry,
first.
I didn't know if there's any.
No, let's we can do this demo with some questions and then get into super fun logistics and let Jeff free before we headed to that. So
Great. Well, yeah, I can dive right in. So, hello, everyone. I know quite a few of you, I think, but my name is Jeff Mixter. I work at OCLC as a product manager on our linked data products and services. Before I jump in, I just wanted to thank everyone. This is a great turnout. I'm really, really excited for the work that the PCC EMCO work group is doing. I know it's probably been mentioned before, but throughout the process of being on this specific pilot subgroup, if anyone has any questions or anything else, or wants to see another demo, or has more questions about entities, by all means, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Anne. And I'll make sure to drop my email in the Teams chat, or the group chat here before I leave. But so let me jump right in. I'm going to start out with a quick presentation, and I'll make the presentation very quick, and then jump into a demo of Meridian itself. So I hope folks can see my screen. If not, someone chime in. I just wanted to give a real quick overview. I know folks are probably familiar with WorldCat entities, or at least have seen myself or Anne or someone else give a presentation about it. But just to sort of go over the high level details, WorldCat entities is a data set of about 150 million different entities for people, places, events, organizations, and broadly speaking, works. Um, You can access it through that website there, but I'll also be demoing it here in a minute. And the real idea of WorldCat entities is to help explore relationships, find connections between entities, and really think about how this can start to power next generation information discovery and information access. Um, As I'll be showing here shortly, the WorldCat entities data set is built on top of the WorldCat ontology, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about right now. But if folks are curious about how we developed the ontology, or I'd like to have a more deeper dive into what classes and properties and constraint rules we've built around it, please certainly feel free to reach out to me. And either myself or Anne can help answer those questions, or more likely, we would include our ontology manager, Michael Phillips, to help out with that as well. So next, I want to talk about what have we been doing with these identifiers. Because, one of the questions I'm regularly asked is, it's great that we have all these new entity identifiers, but how are you actually beginning to use them? How are they being incorporated into workflows, whether that be data management workflows or cataloging workflows? A couple of things we've been doing over the past couple of years is taking these identifiers and adding them at scale to WorldCat data. So we have added over 450 million WorldCat entity URIs to records in WorldCat. You can see an example here. Yeah, I think this is interesting when looking at the work that you guys are interested in doing and pursuing with EMCO, in that, obviously, well-known sort of people, places, events that exist in traditional authority files will have a WorldCat entity ID and can have an ID consequently, sort of subsequently added to the record. But even like not important people like myself can also have a WorldCat entity identifier that can be added to records. And I think from a reuse perspective, from a recall precision, information discovery perspective, recall perspective, and also from a multilingual support perspective, I think this is really starting to demonstrate the value of entity identifiers, sort of building on top of and extending the really good work that sort of more traditional authority files have been serving the library industry for the past 50 years or longer. We've also taken a lot of time to start to integrate WorldCat entities workflows into existing cataloging workflows. So in Record Manager today, and very shortly in Connection, while you're doing original cataloging, maybe editing or cleaning up a record, you can also look up WorldCat entities. So I'll demo that really briefly at the end of the presentation. But the idea here is to not have sort of two separate workflows, one bibliographic cataloging, one sort of entity management, and then having to sort of copy and paste identifiers back and forth. We'd heard from a lot of folks we work with that that is a inefficient workflow. So we're doing our best to start to integrate both the entity management, lookup, curation, creation process with that bibliographic information creation, curation, stewardship process, in this case in Record Manager. Additionally, if you are a Meridian user within Record Manager, you can actually create a brand new entity. So this is a really interesting use case we've talked with quite a few libraries about, in particular, smaller special collection managers of trying to catalog, let's say, digitized architectural drawings. And knowing the architect, knowing where the architect, what firms they worked for in the state or wherever, this allows sort of a one-stop shop while I'm describing this new sort of special digitized item. I can just create new entities at the point of need, create them. It'll immediately get that linked data identifier. It'll immediately be added where it needs to be added in the record, in this case, a 700 field. And then because this has created a new entity, if the next digitized photograph you're describing is by that same architect, you can now just look that person up as opposed to going through the whole process again. So again, these last two slides are just talking about how we're really trying to integrate this entity management component of information stewardship into the bibliographic workflows that are sort of the crux, if you will, of all of the work that we as catalogers are doing. So, if you're curious, another question we get regularly asked is, well, how do I get these identifiers? And the good news is, and the short answer is basically any way that you can get records out of WorldCat, those identifiers will be there. And we've also been specifically targeting these fields that you can see here for adding those identifiers. And additionally, we have a nightly process that goes through and looks for any headings that have been authority controlled and looks for a matching WorldCat entity to try to sort of at scale on a nightly basis add additional linked data identifiers. But I do want to be very clear that when we talked about adding these identifiers, we wanted to be very thoughtful and, in this case, very conservative about how we added them. So our at scale processes were only adding, or initially only adding identifiers, WorldCat entity identifiers to headings that have been controlled because we did not want to inadvertently create or add a incorrect WorldCat entity heading to John Adams. Let's say there's a lot of John Adamses in the world. So we're actually working with our research team right now to run some experiments to test at what level of confidence can we take an uncontrolled heading and find a corresponding WorldCat entity match. Right, just because of the high importance of adding identifiers to subfield ones in this case, we wanted to make sure that we were doing it as accurately as possible. Um, and then this segues nicely into Meridian, where I'll now jump out and do the demo. So everything I talked about is really based around WorldCat entities, the entities themselves. Meridian is a tool and a set of APIs that allow folks to create, curate, and then connect together these WorldCat entities within the growing WorldCat entities knowledge base or knowledge graph. At this point, I'm going to probably jump off and do some demoing. But as I'm sort of transitioning here, if there are any questions, please certainly feel free to jump in. All right, and then so I am going to do a quick demo, and then
Oh, Jeff, Paul asked in the chat,
oh, sorry.
can WorldCat entity identifiers be added to name authority records as 024s like BOF, ISNI, etc.?
Yes.
Yes, I would say yes, though not being a NACO cataloger myself, I would
Yes.
defer to the professionals.
Oh, good. We're getting a yes from an expert. I don't know it didn't pop up who that was, but thank you.
I think it's me, Adam Schiff.
Oh, great. Awesome.
World
Thanks, Adam.
there, yes, they can be added 024.
Then I wonder if there's a follow-up discussion about how that is linked or harvested elsewhere. Like if you add it, if you add URIs in 024, is it helpful to um, like OCLC for creating those connections? Or do you have a whole other set of databases or algorithms for doing that?
We are not as OCLC, we are not actively pushing those identifiers into the NACO hub that we have. It's something we could certainly explore, but we'd probably want to have more conversations with LC staff about that before just sort of bulk doing that work, if that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to share a screen again, and then I will be jumping back to the presentation at the very end just to show how we envision these entities identifiers being used in discovery workflows. So I hope folks can see my screen again. So I am right now in just in WorldCat entities. So I'm just going to do a search real quick for myself. Um, There's only one of me, which is good. Um, and so this is just sort of the freely public WorldCat entities website data set. You can copy identifiers, you can download data. I would imagine folks have probably explored this a little bit. So I am now going to go ahead and sign in as a Meridian user, and I will have to go through my super secret double authentication thing. So please bear with me. Oh, all right. Please hold everyone.
I also have it up if you get another issue, but we can try one more time.
All right. Sorry about that. Second chime was a charm, apparently. But I think this is what happens when you wait till like the very last day to change your organizational password before it expires. Is I think they start punishing you by making things like this fail every so often. All right. So let's go back to me. So now we're in Meridian, and you'll notice a couple of differences. The first one is up in the upper right-hand corner. You can now create entities. So this is going to probably be the primary vehicle for creating new people, places, events, organizations. Um, you can select here. This is where you would choose the type of class, broken down into high-level classes and then subclasses if they are applicable. Um, um, just to go over, say, I know we've talked about this a bit, duplicates. So we do have at the edge duplicate detection in place. So if I try to create a new entity called Jeff Mixter or one of my other variant forms a name, um, I will be presented with an error message or a notification saying the system has found another person that looks similar to this one you're trying to create. Will then prompt you then check to make sure, but obviously because I'm sure there is another Jeff Mixer 2 floating around in the world, you can always override the system and sort of manually create this new entity. But I mention this just because um, through our APIs, if the API detects a potential duplicate, it will actually send back an error message instructing the client that we are not going to create this entity via the API. If you are sure this is not a duplicate of something that already exists in the system, please have a real live person like sign into Meridian and manually create that person themselves. And that's just to prevent the sort of override via an API that could inadvertently create a bunch of duplicates. Um, Also, while in Meridian, you have a couple of new tabs that are added at the top. Edit is pretty self-explanatory. This is where you can go through and do some editing, which I will show here momentarily. Um, we also have a references tab, which is while you're creating or editing claims for the at the entity level, you can reference where you got this information. Right now, it does expect a URL, so you couldn't just put like a citation, let's say, in there. But we have heard that, and we're working on trying to figure out how we could better accommodate the wider range of references. But in this case, you can just see what URLs were referenced for creating these claims about, in this case, me, Jeff Mixter. Um, We also have a history log for each entity. So this will log all of the changes and what they were. And then this institution here is actually the institutional registry ID of who made this change. So this will get you down to like the Ohio State University or OCLC Quality Control or some institution like that. There's no personally identifying information that's stored in this history table, if you will. So then, lastly, the other thing that sort of is enabled when logging into Meridian is a quality score. And the quality score is out of 100, but it's not like a 90 and above is a pass, an A, an 80 to an 89 is a B. It's more of a just a guidepost that can tell you if you're creating a new entity, how complete is this entity? So how many properties, based on the ontology, is properties applicable to, in this case, a person, have you filled out for this entity? And then the second factor or criteria that goes into the quality score is disambiguation. So, how much information has been provided that can help disambiguate me, Jeff Mixter, from another Jeff Mixter? So, descriptions, aliases, multilingual labels, significant dates, whether that be active dates or birth dates, and sort of characteristics like fields of activity can help distinguish me, the linked data Jeff Mixter, from the I don't know, the zoological sciences Jeff Mixter. Um, so that's sort of a high level overview of just the components in the UI. I would imagine probably what folks are also interested in is, well, how do you edit data? So I've now switched over to edit mode. And I'm going to go ahead and first just edit a sort of a simple date attribute here. So right now we have my date of active start date and date of birth. So I'm actually going to edit this because while I don't mind people having my full date of birth, I would prefer to trim this down a little bit. So I mentioned that WorldCat ontology earlier. And the reason I didn't want to spend too much time on it is Meridian, the application, as well as the APIs, have a lot of guardrails in place to make sure that you are only adding properties to an entity in which that property is applicable. So we've sort of broadly categorized different properties under these various sections you can see here. So under significant dates, the properties that would be applicable for a person are date of birth, date of death, active start date, and active end date. So I don't actually need to modify that. But I do want to say actually that I'm not going to give the date. I don't want the date to be a specific day. I'd rather it just be a specific month. So in that case, it changes the date value here. And now when I save that, it's been updated to just May of 1987. And for folks familiar with sort of how ISO dates work, this would not be a valid ISO date. So basically, having a null null in a date in an ISO date is going to throw an ISO validation error. So again, going back to the data model, we spent a lot of time incorporating the W3C's time ontology, which is a very extensive ontology for describing time. So we had heard from librarians and catalogers that those dates are really important. And a lot of the time, we don't know days. We might not know months. We might not even know, all we know is the decade or the century, especially for older historic figures. So there is a lot of flexibility in how you can add the date information. Um, Scrolling down to another category, let's say characteristics. Um, and then you can see award receipts. These are just other occupation or other properties, excuse me, that can be used for a person. So I already have an occupation of product manager, but sort of in my past life at OCLC, I was actually a researcher. I'm technically a software engineer. So I can type. So What this is doing is for properties that you can see as hyperlinks here. What this is doing is linking out to fast controlled headings for topical headings. Um, we wanted to focus on fast specifically, well, a single vocabulary specifically for creating as homogeneous a graph as possible. Because one of the challenges in working with sort of graph data like this, especially in a domain like the library domain where you have a wide number of topical heading vocabularies, LC, SH, FAST, Getty's AAT, is a lot of these vocabularies have understandably duplicate headings or headings that are very, very similar to each other. And so if, for example, there were three software engineers in WorldCat entities, and one of the occupation URIs was to FAST, another was to LCSH, another was to AT, and another, well, the fourth, putting this four, and another one was to Wikidata. While that's great, that is linked data. It's you couldn't, it would be challenging to ask a question, show me all the people who have an occupation of software engineering, unless you know all of those different identifiers for software engineering across those control vocabularies. So as just an initial sort of test of this, we wanted to focus on a single area, and in this case, we chose fast. But there is always the option to not choose a controlled heading from fast, but rather we call this added as a string, but what is actually happening here is it's creating a blank node, an RDF blank node that has a type of RDFS, or sorry, of SCOS concept, and then just a language tagged value for that thing. So we wanted to ensure that we weren't sort of preventing people from saying what they needed to say if it fell outside of FAST, but when it did, or when it was whenever applicable, try to connect to FAST, just again for the homogeneity of the graph data. So I'm actually going to discard those changes. And then scrolling down other sections, sort of more, fuller forms of the name. Here are the linked data identifiers. So we have sort of semantic linked data identifiers. Additionally, you can add non-semantic identifiers. Um, and then down here is where we have all those really powerful connections between this entity and other related organizations and people. If folks remember or know Constance Malpus or Bruce Washburn, I added those as sort of having influenced me. Um, Again, following sort of best practices for needing to manage entity data at sort of the research information management perspective. Um, when you are adding, let's say, a related uneducated at, you can say what the start date and end date is, just because the academic research I was producing while I was at The Ohio State University studying history is probably pretty different from the academic output I was creating when I was studying at Kent State University for my library science degree. So again, sort of the nuance of what you can say, and then downstream impact of how structuring that data in that way can lead to sort of new and interesting data management, data discovery, data connection opportunities. So I'm going to pause there because I know already gone over, and I do have two more slides I want to show. But I know there were some questions I'm guessing that popped into chat. So could I ask you to read those just so I don't need to flip-flop back and forth between them?
Yeah, for sure. So one question was about the references when you're adding or editing a particular property. Could the URL in the references be the WorldCat entity for the bibliographic work? If if that work had information about where the agent went to school or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So OCLC, so WorldCat has a URL pattern associated with a given OCN. So yes, you could definitely add um, a link that would resolve you to a worldcat.org page for the bibliographic resource as the reference.
And one other thought that I have is I've some of these questions that are coming up are things that I think could be part of the discussion of this group. So let's say there's kind of a gap in how you want to represent, say, references or something that could be surfaced in this group. And, you know, we could, you know, make recommendations or make suggestions. So that's a kind of an example of like, hey, should we come up with the kind of a best practice for ourselves / identify potential improvements. And then Adam Schiff mentions the LCDGT demographic something. I'm sorry, but has lots of occupation terms that aren't in LCSH and not in FAST. Maybe FAST could also be based on LC DGT. I know that's come up in some of our other conversations.
Yeah, and again, that great feedback. Thank you, Adam. We've heard similar comments, and again, I just wanted to I don't mean to overemphasize it, but the use of fast was just convenience. We have a lot of fast expertise here in house, and it was a data set I'd worked with extensively when I was in our research division. So again, this wasn't sort of a stamped in stone decision. It was just more of a starting point. So to Ann's earlier point of during the PCC EMCO work, establishing best practices, recommendations, we were very flexible to be able to make these changes to the vocabularies you can choose from, the data model, things like that.
And then a question about, is there a purpose behind the linked data identifiers only being viewable when signed in?
No, it's just part of the Meridian data. So there's no reason behind it. We consider that so I guess there is a reason. A lot of that data requires data aggregation and analysis from us. So we're sort of constantly pulling together data sets, or ORCID, Wikidata, et cetera. So we do a lot of aggregation work there. So that is why it is sort of past that Meridian sign-in. But other than that, it's part of the Meridian tier of data, if that makes sense.
You can use it though. It's part of WorldCat Entities state. When you just view it on the screen and get it in that, you're able to sign out. So if you were to sign out and sign in, you could still see those
Yeah,
identifiers. So I
yeah.
think that, yeah, there's a question around that. And in part, I think we're all learning about the traffic that everything is inundated with AI land. So in part,
Yeah.
yeah. So now you're able to access those.
Yeah, and just to clarify
Items.
what I did there, because I did sign in again, what I signed in with was just a freely available worldcat.org account. So it was not tied to sort of any sort of subscription or membership or anything like that.
And then uh, Ruth had I think, some observations around data that appears to be derived from Wikidata, and the entity doesn't contain properties from Wikidata or LC, which I think we could just mention briefly how the initial entities were derived and what we currently have in place for, updates.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, our initial seed of data was derived from a variety of data sets. So it came from VOF, Wikidata for supplemental information, LCNAF, which was sort of considered part of VOF because they're one of the contributing files to VOF. And then what we've done is based on the WorldCat ontology, we've sort of done targeted pulling of information from a variety of different data sources. So we've pulled sets of information from specific contributors to VOF, from Wikidata. So that's how we sort of created the baseline for WorldCat entities. Um, and that sort of varies by entity type. So we also pulled information from geonames for geographic heading or for geographic entities. And I think those were the major data sets. So what we have in place right now is a workflow that on a nightly basis will be looking for new entities that have been added to LCNIF, and then we'll have them added to WorldCat entities. I know that was one of the comments we heard from folks was how to make how to make a static data set more living or more sort of living and breathing outside of just people contributing to it. So we've built that sort of pipeline between LC's controller, LCNF, and WorldCat entities. And we're also working on building more data connection pipelines with other data sets like VOF to be able to get updated information. For example, when someone passes away, making sure that a death date is added as quickly as possible to the WorldCat entities data without having to rely on a Meridian user or an OCLC staff member from having preventing them having to manually add that to the entity data. So ultimately the goal is to make WorldCat entities a sort of standalone living breathing data set. And then obviously all the people contributing to it can contribute and edit it to sort of give it those characteristics as well.
Cool. There are, I think, not a question. Iman asks if content is language specific, and is it possible to add aliases in other languages as well? I'm going to answer that one. That
Yes.
answers yes, yes.
Yeah, so I should have showed that, but the answer is yes. For anything that's a string-based characteristic, you can choose what language that string is that you're adding, and WorldCat Entity supports a huge number of BCP47 languages, so not just languages, but also specific scripts within a language.
Cool. And then just I think a comment about logging in with the free account. Some folks are doing that, and having that information was helpful.
Great.
And then I did want to mention that similar to that, like free account login, the Wiz key to access data, if you'd like through an API, is also free. So you just have to request it through the developer network. Um, so I just want to mention that access as well. And so Jeff, then I'll pass it to you to finish
Yeah,
off
great.
the
Yeah, sorry
last
for
couple slides.
monopolizing the time here. Real quick, I did want to show Record Manager. So I'm not going to do it because I think this is our production record manager. But that ability to add WorldCat entity links. So this one obviously already has my identifier here. But if you're in Record Manager and you find a field you'd want to add an identifier to, because you're doing original cataloging or cleaning up a record, if you just right click on the field you can select insert WorldCat entity, and it will actually do an automatic search for you based on whatever is in the sort of subfield A, subfield D, the string-based subfields. And then if and when you find the match, just hit select entity, and that will drop that identifier in to the field, into the appropriate subfield for you. And conversely, if you are a Meridian subscriber, based on your login credentials, we can also add a create WorldCat entity option, which will bring you sort of a modal here, similar to the one we saw in WorldCat entities. Again, you fill out the pertinent, appropriate information, hit create and insert, and it'll do the exact same thing. So again, that's sort of just trying to tie those workflows together. So now I really want to quickly jump out. Then I will turn things back over to the facilitators here. Um, I hope folks can see my presentation being shared again. Um,
Yes.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the whole next step. So, creating and managing this data is really important just for the stewardship and management of information. But, you know, to what end? And I think one of the exciting ends is being able to improve information discovery. So, as of today, in worldcat.org, we are now indexing all of those linked data identifiers. There's, somewhere north of 450 million linked data identifiers are being indexed. So if you go off to WorldCat entities and do a search, if you see any results that have, in this case, this little person icon, you can sort of hover over that and then select works by an author or works about an author, which will now kick you into an identifier-based search. So again, what you're going to have is the recall is going to be, or the precision is going to be super high because you're going to be guaranteed to only bring back works or records or whatever you want to call them that have that identifier in this case a 100 or a 700 or a 600. And the recall is going to be significantly lower. It might actually be artificially low because of that sort of not having added identifiers to all the possible records we could, just for that, caution around inappropriately adding one. But it is really powerful to just see that experience of doing a search for an author like Aldous Huxley and seeing in the sort of agent facet a bunch of different forms of Aldous Huxley. Huxley, comma Aldous, Aldous Huxley, Huxley, comma Aldous with his dates and parens. So you can see in that text facet all the different types of string variants that have been added for the person Aldous Huxley. And then doing that identifier-based search and seeing the number of results significantly decrease because of that extremely high precision searching you can do using the identifier. But ultimately, what we're shooting for, or aiming for, is something akin to what you'd see as a knowledge card, being able to provide information about pertinent information, place of birth, place of death, death date, birth date if you're a person, a picture or an image if applicable, and then relationships to other entities. And I think what will be very powerful about these relationships is because they will relate to other WorldCat entities. We can guarantee that if you were to click on one of those related entities, we would be able to bring back at least one result from WorldCat related to that entity you clicked on. So you'll never hit a dead end when you're exploring those related entities, which again is another, I think, advantage of having sort of a unified bibliographic and entity data ecosystem in that you don't have to there you will not hit a situation where the entity has a relationship to something, let's say a Getty ULAN person, but then when you click on that related entity that's backed by that ULAN identifier, if that ULAN identifier isn't added anywhere in a WorldCat record, you won't get any results back. And from the perspective of an end user experience, end users aren't really looking for people, places, events, organizations. They're looking for bibliographic resources associated with those entities. And this, we feel, is going to be a very efficient way to be able to deliver that. But again, broadly speaking, having these identifiers in records will help improve information discovery, retrieval, precision, recall, things like that. So, sorry, I know I've monopolized over 3/4 of your meeting today, but wanted to give an overview and then answer any questions, and again offer the opportunity to ask any further questions with a follow-up meeting if need be. And I'll drop my email into the chat so folks have it. So, thank you, everyone.
Yes, and as Jeff mentioned, you mentioned APIs a few times. If anybody's interested in a deeper dive on anything API related, we can do that individually. If there's enough people in the group that are interested, we could do that as well. Sai asked about new terms from Wikidata being periodically added to WorldCat entities. I think you talked a little bit earlier about integrations and things like that.
Yeah, so we wanted to sort of, in terms of how we at scale add new entities or maybe automatically add new entities, we wanted to again start very small. So something that we know is used in the library community. So we focus predominant or initially on Library of Congress name authority file, but we will start to expand out from there because we know that there's a lot of sort of traditional control vocabularies, as well as sort of other entity management data sets like Wikidata that are gaining use and prevalence and support in the industry. So we will be working to expand the support of pulling together additional data sets, as we have use cases and being able to test and things like that.
And that's another opportunity, I think, for at each in our community of practice and more broadly in EMCO, we can, talk about the sort of ecosystem. And then Charles asked a quick question. Are entities restricted to the Mark 8 character set? Same as NAF?
They are not, no.
No, it's UTF-8. Is that the other
UTF-8,
option?
yep, Unicode, all of that, supported BCP 47 languages, and then their corresponding scripts and things like that. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Shoot Jeff an email, shoot me an email. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure again. Thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to see folks' interest in the EMCO group broadly speaking, but specifically we're interested in working with WorldCat entities. So if there's anything that I can do to help answer questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out.
Yay.
All right, thank
Applause.
you, everyone.
So does that mean we get to move on with our agenda?
Yes, it does. We have a brief bit of time, but I think that's fine. Um, the other registries we're all moving at this pace, so we don't have to be worried that, we're not meeting anything. So yeah, we can move right along.
Would we like to discuss the next portion? How often we would like to have meetings?
Yeah, so as I was thinking about this, I was wondering, like, do people want to put their suggestions in the chat? Should we send a survey to everybody that's on the email list or the roster rather? I'll stop talking. I promise I'll stop talking.
No, you're great. I'm happy for the input, and I'm sure everybody else is too. Okay, Paula says to send a survey. That sounds like a great idea. Anybody else have a different idea as to how to do it? I think a survey sounds like a good idea. I'm up for that. Getting thumbs up. Survey sounds good. Okay, we can send out a survey. Is everybody okay if we send it the same way that we did the meeting today? Does anybody mind if I send the survey to the core group and then also send it to the whole EMCO group too? Did anybody mind that I sent that to everybody for this meeting?
No, I think in IMAC we were talking about like the folks on the roster can kind of get first pick of what works, and
Okay.
then happy to share out to the broader group to participate. So whichever way folks want to do it is fine.
Okay, great. Nice. I didn't want anybody annoyed that it was going out to everybody. So if that works for everybody, that's great. Then I will do it that way. And that would be awesome. I can work on that in the next few days and get it sent out. If that sounds good. So we still have a couple minutes left. Does that mean I don't know, communication method's going to be the same thing, email. So I don't know, same thing with the survey. Should I include that in the survey maybe? About how we communicate? And maybe use the chat again if anybody wants to send a suggestion or give a thumbs up or whatever about that. Sorry, I know this is kind of challenging.
Yeah, this is kind of a question, again, from an IMAC perspective. We're not able to get like a PCC listserv for each of the communities of practice. So we kind of got to come up with uh, an alternative. So if people are open to Slack, or if we want to keep just a list of emails or Google groups or something like that. So that would be what, maybe something else we can put in a survey, or if people have strong feelings that you want to put in the chat, that's great too.
Okay, yeah, any suggestions, any and all suggestions are welcome. Please feel free to pop in and comment, chat, or add it to the chat, whatever you like. We're still starting out and are happy to take any ideas. So far, people are thumbs upping the meeting once a month in the chat.
Yeah, let's have that as an option. I think we can send that survey. I'm remembering that we wanted to have some asynchronous component to our communication, since the time zones are myriad. So it sounds good.
Great. And we can try to get it in the evenings and see how many people are amenable to that too. And maybe we'll get it on the books at some point. Okay, well, we've got 6 minutes. Should we try another one on the agenda or call it? What do you think?
Try one more.
Try one more? Okay, statistics. And what did you mean by statistics? What statistics are we reporting?
So I think now that we got some of the basic fun on its way, in terms of meeting and all of that, the we can do sort of the fun part of talking about, I think some questions came up about what would be the sources for references. Are people incorporating this into other ILS? Some of these questions. So, and statistics is kind of part of this next set of questions. How might we want, what are meaningful statistics in this type of, context? And then also, when it comes to, best practices and things like that, collecting existing documentation. So these are just the different kind of areas of conversation coming up that I don't think we can probably get into very deep in depth right now, but wanted
Is
to
this
start.
is this another thing we should sort of like, I assume one of the outcomes of this group is going to be kind of making best practices documentation. I wonder if we want to maybe in the next session start doing like, brainstorming sort of the kind of thing I used to do on a Jamboard, but apparently Jamboard has been discontinued. To kind of go in and everybody throws in ideas, or if we also want to do, and also Mrs. Jamboard, or if this is another thing we could do, or at least start doing in a survey. How do people feel about live brainstorming as opposed to survey brainstorming?
Maybe live with some prompts that we collect optionally from a survey, perhaps. And I have access to Miro. And in terms of tools, I don't know what other people like to use for that. That might be better. It's like idea board. Is that a thing? Idea board? Well, we can talk about that. Okay. So it sounds like Misty and Jill, we've got our
We have some fun coming up and lots to think about. So that sounds great.
I think, yeah, Benjamin suggested brainstorming in breakout rooms, maybe in the next meeting. So maybe the three of us can discuss what little rooms to set up for the next meeting.
I wasn't necessarily saying breakout rooms because I know people don't like them. I was just saying find ways to do smaller groups. Never heard anyone who liked a breakout room, but maybe we can pre-schedule smaller groups or something. I don't know. Or we can try breakout rooms. Maybe with this particular group of people, it'll be fun.
Or, yeah, asynchronously via Google Docs. Yeah, maybe we could set up some of those. I'm going to make this an action item as create brainstorming infrastructure for us. How's that?
Awesome. It's in writing. We have to do it.
Thank you, Misty and Jill, for getting us going here.
Thank you for keeping us together.
Probably wrap up. Yeah.
Thanks for getting Jeff together too. That was great.
Yeah, and if there are other questions, maybe I know that people put them also in the Google Doc, just so that certainly there are questions you might want to ask about your specific scenario, but if there's any general ones, we could put them in the doc, or create our own little FAQ or something too.
Sounds awesome.
No, nunca me llegaron, Pati. Y estaba yo al pendiente, pero no. Está bien.
Okay. Well, we will talk so that they can have privacy. We could probably wrap it up. Okay.
Bueno.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Else?
Se cortó, pero ya estoy de regreso. Sí, algo pasó. Sí, Pati, ¿me escuchas?